The bombing of Pearl Harbor crippled or sank half of the US battleships then in service. This was not the first time aircraft had attacked a fleet in port. The Battle of Taranto had seen obsolete swordfish torpedo bombers cripple and sink Italian battleships. Whilst dreadnoughts and battlecruisers still had roles to play, the carrier was beginning to dominate naval actions. Both gunnery and aircraft operations were significantly improved with the introduction of radar. Early radar sets were fragile and low fidelity, but in the years before and during the war, the technology had rapidly improved. By tracking enemy signatures, a capital ship could still detect and engage targets even if they were obscured by rain and storms, or they could effectively fight at night. Carriers could also use radar to vector aircraft to intercept enemy bombers or to coordinate large-scale attacks. With this enhanced threat from the air, most capital ships were refitted with extra anti-aircraft mounts, utilising every bit of deck space to mount 20 and 40mm autocannon. Displacing 2,500 tons fully loaded, new large destroyers like the Fletcher class were now the workhorses of the fleet. 5 dual-purpose 5-inch guns could be used to engage surface targets or add to the fleet's anti-aircraft screen. With 10 torpedo tubes each with a 14-kilometre range, squadrons of Fletchers were a major threat to any capital ship that closed with them as well. Depth-charge launchers and active sonar made them fairly effective in anti-submarine operations. World War II was asymmetric in the Atlantic. With no high seas fleet, Germany used her capital ships as convoy raiders, with very little success. Bismarck was crippled by aircraft and sunk by surface ships on her maiden voyage. Tirpitz was destroyed in an air raid after being confined to port for months. German submarine raiders saw some early successes attacking Allied convoys, but ultimately suffered extreme losses when anti-submarine warfare skills and technology improved. By contrast, the American submarine blockade of Japan was incredibly successful as the Imperial Japanese Navy failed to develop effective tactics and technology for submarine hunting. The Pacific saw far more pitched battles between both battleships and carrier fleets. The Second Naval Battle of Guadalcanal had Japanese and American capital ships trading gunfire in a night action, and the battles of the Coral Sea, Midway, and the Philippine Sea saw carriers sink the majority of the capital ships lost. Operation Tengo, when the Japanese superdreadnought Yamato was destroyed, had almost entirely been a battle of American aircraft attacking Japanese surface ships. By the end of the war, the Americans had 28 fleet carriers in service. While naval gunfire was still useful for supporting landings or to protect carriers from other vessels, the battleship was no longer the primary killer of surface ships. Aircraft were. The Germans had fielded a prototype radio-guided glide bomb during the war called Fritz X. Guided weapons and rocketry would redefine naval armament after the Second World War, further amplifying the destructive power of aircraft and smaller warships.